Robert was sweet while we were dating, but he changed drastically after we got married. He constantly brags about working at a top-tier company and lords it over me and the kids every day. I wanted to continue working after getting married, but Robert and his father John ordered me to quit, so I reluctantly became a housewife. One evening, Robert looked at me and laughed. "You've aged, haven't you? You were somewhat better when we got married. Being the housewife and goofing off has made you age even faster. Using the kids as an excuse to be lazy, it's only natural you become worthless as a person." "I've had enough. Let's get a divorce," I blurted out. Robert gave a sleazy grin. "Raise the 4 kids on your own. I won't help you at all." I almost laughed. Had he ever helped before? Thinking about being rid of the noisy bunch made me feel refreshed. I'll get the divorce papers from City Hall and slam them on him. "You can say whatever you want for now. Enjoy it while it lasts." I'm Scarlett, a 50-year-old housewife. I met Robert through my parents and married him 30 years ago. His verbal abuse has worsened over the years, becoming a constant headache. It wasn't like this when we were dating. Robert, who graduated from college and works for a top-tier company, often talked about his job during dates. I didn't understand all the jargon, but I thought he was serious and passionate about his work. Having lost my dad in childhood and seen my mom struggle, I wanted to marry Robert, who had a stable job, to give her peace of mind. Growing up without my mom around was hard for me. In contrast, Robert was raised by his dad after his parents divorced when he was a teenager. Not knowing my own dad, I was thrilled to have someone I could call dad, even if we weren't blood related. I hoped we could get along like a real father and daughter, but that hope was quickly dashed. After getting married, I found out that Robert was completely under John's thumb. Many of Robert's relatives are not salaried workers but run their own businesses or restaurants, and John also started his own business. Robert deeply respected John. I got into a famous university and joined a company because I followed Dad's advice. He often said proudly, "Since the divorce from Mom, Dad raised me while expanding his company. He's an amazing man." "Yes, he is," I'd say, not knowing how to respond. "I'll make sure my son studies hard and gets into my alma mater's high school and college." I worked in Dad's company for a while but had to change jobs due to an injury, causing trouble for Dad. So, if I have a son, I plan to make him the successor to Dad's company. That's thinking too far ahead, especially when I wasn't even pregnant yet. Before we had kids, I could listen to him and laugh it off. But after giving birth to girls in succession, Robert and John gradually started to treat me coldly. When our 3rd daughter was born, John visited the hospital room, looked disdainfully at the baby sleeping in the bed, and clicked his tongue. "Another girl, hey? Robert, you've got a failure for a wife." "I'm sorry, Dad," Robert said. "Scarlett, if the next one's a girl too, we're getting a divorce. A wife who can't produce an heir is useless to us." Exhausted in bed after a difficult birth, I couldn't stop crying at their cruel words. The thought of divorce crossed my mind then. Later, when our son Thomas was born, John doted on him. Robert, John, and Thomas would go out to see animated movies, buy toys, and John would give Thomas an allowance, leaving Thomas confused and the daughters complaining to me about John. Every time I slightly burnt the food or a speck of dust fell after cleaning, Robert dramatically lamented and mocked me. "If this were your job, you'd be fired immediately." It must be nice for women to be supported by their husbands and laze around at home all day. I wish I could just play with the kids and slack off every day too. Hearing this always made me angry. I had wanted to continue working, but right after getting married, Robert and John ordered me to quit my job. "Are you sure you can handle your duties as a wife perfectly if you're going to slack off?" "Quit your office job," Robert said. John added, "That's right. You have to take care of him and do the housework perfectly. You don't need to work. His salary is enough to live on." I was appalled by their outdated attitudes but didn't want to argue with my husband or John as a newlywed, so I obediently complied. After Thomas started elementary school, I tried to re-enter the workforce as a full-time employee but was rejected everywhere. The reason was always the same. Having 4 children, they assumed I'd likely take time off for sickness or other issues. Reluctantly, I became a housewife and Robert treated me like a servant, constantly finding faults and criticizing me as a useless housewife. He used his busy job as an excuse to dump all household chores and parenting on me. I didn't mind handling the housework since I was a housewife, but whether I was sick or sleep-deprived after childbirth, he acted as if it had nothing to do with him, showing no support at all. Recently, I've been sleep deprived because of the baby's night cries. Robert, you're off tomorrow, right? Could you take care of the child for one night? Ha! I finally get a day off. Don't ruin my precious holiday. Taking care of the baby is a mom's job. You can at least handle that much. When I was at my limit after days of only 2 hours of sleep and asked Robert, who was laughing loudly at a video with a beer in hand, for help, he yelled at me. Another day, when I wanted to consult about the kids, he said, "You're an adult. Think and decide for yourself. You're a veteran, having raised 3 already. Don't rely on others." If he came home to find children's toys scattered on the floor, he'd immediately get in a bad mood. When I'm tired and come home to see the house in a mess, I lose the will to come home. You've been home all day, right? It should be clean. I'm sorry, Thomas was crying, and it was hard to prepare dinner. I'll clean it up now, I said as I gathered the toys. Robert's sarcasm rained down on me. Thomas is spoiled because you're not strict enough. You're a failure. This makes you unqualified as a mom. Spoiled. I wondered. Thomas was only 5. It's natural for him to assert himself, but such comments felt like a stab in the heart. Hey, don't look so glum. It ruins the meal. It's annoying, so go to another room with the kids. Robert waved me away. Our eldest daughter, Madison, glared at him. Dad, why say that when you're eating the meal Mom made? What did you say? A girl talking back to her dad? If you're going to complain, then leave. Madison, don't say such things to Dad. Let's go upstairs. I calmed Madison down and took the younger kids upstairs. Once we were in our room, Madison burst out. Why do you stay silent, Mom? You should talk back to Dad. Doesn't it make you angry being told such things? Why not just divorce? I'd love to, but divorcing with 4 kids requires a lot of courage. I'll earn part-time money when I'm in high school. Isn't that enough? I smiled weakly at Madison. Thank you. I appreciate the thought. As I gently stroked Madison's head, she fell silent. Madison, a middle schooler, seemed to feel that her parents' relationship was beyond repair, so on days she had no plans, she'd actively take care of her younger siblings. I wished Robert, as their dad, would interact more with the kids, but he always treated them as nuisances and a source of his stress. On weekends, when the kids made noise, he'd complain and order me to take them somewhere. My head hurts. I feel sick. Despite disliking children, when we visited the in-laws' house, he pretended to dote on Thomas to show John how much he valued the pair, which was hypocritical. One weekend, Robert got up past noon and, seeing me eating lunch with the kids, announced, "You see I'm tired, right? Take the kids somewhere. I'm going out for drinks with a junior from work in the evening, so you can come back by then." All right, by the way, our living expenses have been cut back this past year. Can we return to the original amount? I asked timidly. Robert's eyes narrowed. You can manage with $300 for food and living expenses. As a housewife, you should be able to budget better. Can't you do that without a college education? $300 is impossible. Your salary must have increased with all the overtime and weekend work, right? Why are the living expenses being reduced? When I questioned him, Robert became furious. Shut up. How I spend my salary is my business. How dare a housewife argue with me? Who do you think provides for this lifestyle? I gave up arguing with Robert. I couldn't rely on him anymore. While the kids were at school, I studied, earned qualifications, and secretly started working remotely. One evening, after a while, Robert came home reeking of alcohol and laughed when he saw me. I thought you were some old lady, but what a surprise. You're Scarlett. Welcome home. You've drunk too much. Just leave me alone. But you've really aged. You used to look a bit better when we got married. I was furious. Due to the reduced living expenses, I had to switch to cheaper cosmetics and hadn't bought any new clothes in a year. Meanwhile, he frequently bought new suits and ties, went out drinking every night under the pretense of treating his subordinates, and purchased brand-name shoes and watches. With a trembling voice, I clenched my fists and retorted, I want to dress up beautifully too, but you're the one not giving me any money, Robert. Don't blame others. It's because you're lazing around as a housewife that you age faster, Robert mocked loudly, always sleeping, lacking a sense of urgency, using the kids as an excuse to be lazy. No wonder you're failing as a person. Dizziness hit me from the anger. Who was it that ordered me to become a housewife despite wanting to continue working? I've had enough. Let's get a divorce, I blurted out. Robert's face showed a moment of surprise, but he quickly smirked. Fine by me. I'm tired of seeing your gloomy face anyway, he agreed easily. But raise the 4 kids on your own. I won't help you at all. I almost laughed. Had he ever helped before? It had always been just me raising all 4. Thinking of getting rid of the noisy bunch felt refreshing. Too absurd to respond, I headed for the entrance. I'll get the divorce papers from the city hall and slam them on him, I thought, turning my back to Robert. I smirked defiantly. You can say whatever you want for now. Enjoy it while it lasts. When I handed the signed divorce papers to Robert, he took them with a half smile. Are you sure? Don't come crying to me with regrets. Can you manage with 4 kids? You've been living off of me. As I urged the kids and packed up for the move, he lounged on the sofa, taunting in a mocking tone. Your mom says she works, but it'll be tough for an old lady to support all 5 of you. Ready for a poor life together. Even if you try to work, you'll get rejected because of the kids. Actually, I've started remote work. I have savings from before we were married, and we can manage if we don't live luxuriously. What? If you started working, why didn't you tell me? You were always too tired or telling me to take the kids somewhere because we were too noisy. You never listened to me properly. Well, whatever. Your salary is probably way less than mine. Don't beg me for help. Ignoring Robert's sarcasm, I silently packed our belongings into cardboard boxes. The movers will come in 3 days to pick up our stuff, so leave it as is. Please take care of the divorce papers. Got it. Do whatever you want. I called the movers, took only the essentials and valuables, and drove to my parents' house. I planned to stay there for a while and look for a new place once things settled down. I briefly explained the divorce to the kids while packing, but in the car, I went over the situation again. Sorry it's so sudden, but we'll be transferring to a new school starting next week. I'm sorry, everyone. Yay, I love Grandma, so I'm excited. It's not far by bus. We can still play with our friends, so it's all good. The kids tried to cheer me up by acting excited, nearly making me tear up. Won't you miss living with Dad, Thomas? Not really. Dad doesn't like us, right? Thomas pouted. He always yells that we're noisy or annoying. When he's home on the weekends, he doesn't play with us or listen to us. I didn't like being around him. Right, we all felt that way, Mom. The kids' agreement filled me with regret. I should have made the decision to divorce sooner. When I called my mom to explain, she was surprised and saddened. Robert always played the good husband and dad when we visited my parents for Christmas, so my mom thought we were happy together. She was heartbroken by the news. After the kids went to bed at my parents' house, my mom told me, Scarlett, you can stay here as long as you like. We'll manage the living expenses somehow. Thank you, but I'll be okay. Could you introduce me to a lawyer, though? Of course, but you'll have to wait a bit since I'm fully booked right now. Let me know if there's anything you need help with, okay? Understood, I replied. My mom's strong words resonated with me. 6 months after the divorce, my children and I were starting to adjust to our new environment. As I returned home from shopping, I found Robert standing in front of the gate. His hair, now mixed with gray, was unkempt, and dark circles under his eyes made him seem utterly disheveled. He lunged at me as soon as he saw me with my bag, but I coldly shrugged him off. Who are you? Come on, don't be like that. I'm your master. I don't have a master. What does my ex-husband want at my parents' house? I asked, pushing him away. Robert began to rant in a near frenzy. I was suddenly kicked out of the house. What's going on? It wasn't sudden. You must have received several notices about paying the rent, right? If you ignore them, getting kicked out is inevitable. Why should I pay? Because you are the tenant. Hearing the commotion, a middle-aged woman from the neighboring house peeked out of her front door. Scarlett, what's happening? Should I call the police? No, it's okay. It's just my ex-husband who has come over. The woman glanced at Robert and frowned. Ah, that one. Scarlett, let me know if you need anything. With that, she disappeared back into her house. What have you been telling people about me? Let's go inside. We're causing a disturbance. Ignoring his question, I led Robert into the house. As soon as we were inside, Robert sprawled on the living room sofa and downed the coffee I offered before returning to the topic. That house was bought by your mom, wasn't it? Yes, but the deed was in your name, Robert. You were too proud to have it in your wife's name, saying it would be embarrassing. Robert seemed to remember, tilting his head as if to say, that's right. But back then, you were just a regular employee without enough money to pay the mortgage, so my mom used to transfer money into the account every month. Oh, that's right. Then stopping the transfers suddenly would be a problem for me, wouldn't it? You're dumb. Can't you understand that? I sighed, holding my forehead. Who's the dumb one here? Who in the world keeps paying their daughter's ex-husband's mortgage? Robert frowned. Your mom's rich, right? If she has money, she could have continued paying. It's unfair. Families should help each other in times of need. Who was it that told me not to rely on others when I needed help with child care? And aren't you a senior manager at a large company? Why are you so broke? Pressing him, Robert became flustered and replied, You know why. I was treating my subordinates. It's an important duty of a superior. At the expense of our household budget, the time you reduce our living expenses coincides with when you started working overtime and on weekends. Robert's face stiffened at my observation. I had to maintain communication and motivate them to work harder because of the increased workload, Robert explained. Oh, I see. So you're kind to subordinates but cold to your own children and wife. Subordinates are different, they're endearing. Ah, I see. How about this suggestion? If you're kicked out, why not stay in a business hotel? I got some hotel vouchers from a friend of my mom's who runs one. Robert's eyes widened. Really? You give that to me? I have plenty, so I don't mind sharing a few. You do have your generous moments. I'll be sorted by this weekend, so that'll do. Handing over the hotel vouchers I received from my mom, Robert left in a good mood. Everything seemed set. On the weekend evening, while watching animal videos with the kids in the living room, the doorbell rang. At the door were Robert and John. I swallowed my surprise as they barged into the living room. John surveyed the relaxing children and bellowed, Watch such nonsense. That's why you're all so childish. The pleasant atmosphere of our weekend shattered, and the kids teared up from John's thunderous scolding. Then John turned his anger towards Robert. Robert, are you really leaving Thomas with this woman? What about the talks of him being the heir? I want her to struggle raising 4 kids on her own to make her realize how much she depended on my earnings, Robert declared arrogantly. If you want an heir, I should marry a younger, more obedient wife and have new children. I guess you're right. Find a new wife quickly. Their conversation made me feel sick. As always, they only saw a wife as a tool for producing children. Are you too daft? Robert flashed a malicious smile. We've come to demand compensation. What? Neglecting your husband's care while fussing over the children is a grave sin. You and the kids made it impossible for me to relax on weekends, causing me stress. So I'm claiming $10,000 for nuisance fees. I agree with Robert. A wife should prioritize her husband over the children. Neglecting the husband's care shows a lack of awareness as a wife. It took me a while to grasp Robert's words. I thought they were joking, but seeing John's intimidating presence, it seemed they were serious. A headache began to form. I wanted to commend myself for enduring years with such a person. As I pondered how to respond, Mom appeared at the open living room door. What a lively scene, she spoke in a calm tone. A man in a suit stood behind her. As planned, Mom had brought a lawyer. Relieved, I glanced at John, who had turned pale and was trembling. The once aggressive man seemed entirely different. Hello, Scarlett's mom. Dad, please explain the situation. Robert, too, seemed taken aback by John's sudden change. Regaining my composure with the appearance of allies, I left the room, fetched a large envelope from the bedroom, and returned to the living room after sending the kids upstairs with Madison. Leaving only adults, I laid out the contents of the envelope on the living room table. Mom, you finally got the lawyer's time. I'm sorry for the wait. Since your husband is here, may we discuss the compensation and child support claims now? Compensation. Robert looked puzzled, and I explained. Since you stayed in the hotel we specified, it was easy for the detective to gather evidence. You were even caught getting cozy in the car, resulting in many shots together. As I spread out the photos proving his infidelity, Robert was speechless. Eventually, he snapped back to reality and exploded. You had me stay at that hotel just to have a detective follow me? That's despicable. I don't want to hear that from someone who's been cheating for over a year. I also laid out the joint debit card statement on the table, showing shocking spending of over $10,000 on his mistress. You were stingy with the household expenses, telling me to respect you as a corporate executive. Yet as a father and husband, you're the worst. John spoke softly after a silence. So it wasn't you, but Robert who was having the affair. That's right, she's making a big fuss over a mere affair. Truly a worthless wife, Robert retorted carelessly. John glared sharply at Robert. You damn liar. John suddenly exploded, and I tentatively asked, What did you hear, John? Jane explained with a displeased look. Robert told me that you were the one cheating, neglecting the kids and housework, dumping everything onto him. He also told me how you threatened to take the kids and leave, and he came to ask me for help. What? That's all lies. Would you like to hear the recordings of Robert with his mistress or the verbal abuse towards me and the kids? No, I'd rather not. Just like your mother, you're hopeless, John muttered irritably. After a moment of contemplation, he abruptly apologized deeply in front of me and my mom. Scarlett, I apologize for not investigating thoroughly and believing my idiot son's story. Please forgive me. Why the hell are you apologizing to them, Dad? Apologizing to women is shameful. Stop it, Robert said discontentedly, to which John hurriedly explained. Listen, you should apologize sincerely too. Scarlett's mom is a great benefactor to our family. Didn't you hear from your brother last year? His company was about to go under. I think I heard something about that. Scarlett's mom bought his company last year and became the new president. Thanks to her, the business was turned around. If she pulls her investment now, even our group company will be hit hard. Upon hearing John's words, Robert seemed to finally grasp the situation. His defiant demeanor shifted to one of panic, and he knelt beside John, crying like a child. I'm so sorry. It's all right, I wouldn't ruin your uncle's company over something like this. But Robert, you need to take responsibility, Mom said with an angelic smile. The mistress was your subordinate. I know the president of Robert's company. I've informed them about what happened. Starting next week, you're being relocated to a remote island. Such a shame just after you worked so hard to become a manager. Oh well, do your best at your new job. Robert, looking up, began to cry. It was his own fault. I felt refreshed, looking down at Robert. Later, with the lawyer present, we proceeded with the divorce formalities. A completely deflated Robert agreed to pay in full the compensation and the misuse savings from our joint account that I had demanded. Mom, as she declared, informed Robert's boss about the affair through a mutual acquaintance. The boss, being a devoted husband, was furious. Robert's mistress resigned voluntarily, and Robert was sent to a branch on a remote island. Demanding and receiving compensation from the mistress in a lump sum, I learned that Robert had fallen from his elite path. The mistress quickly dumped him, bound to start over. Robert, however, faced ridicule for the reason behind his demotion and, feeling unbearable, quit the company. Burdened with a huge debt from repaying me in monthly child support payments, Robert was working multiple part-time jobs from morning till night. Estranged by John, he was living a lonely life in a dim apartment. Meanwhile, John, having injured my mom, faced cold treatment from relatives. After employees complained about his tyrannical behavior, his company faced a strike, leading to its collapse. Now he's working part-time at a restaurant, berated by a younger manager. While Robert was preoccupied with his affair, I saved money through remote work and bought a second-hand house. Moving in with my children, I found the memories too unpleasant and had no intention of returning. The children, now free from Robert and John, were noticeably happier and more comfortable. On long weekends, we visited my mom's house, enjoying cooking and chatting together, which became our latest pleasure. I plan to continue remote work and, once Thomas is a bit older, look for a full-time job again. With occasional support from my mom, I want to live happily with my 4 children.